Hello and welcome to the Intel Network and Edge panel on Edge Services Made Easy. I'm Guy Daniels, Director of Content at TelecomTV. There are enormous possibilities for Edge services with so many different use cases. And we're going to focus on one particular area for today's panel, and that is the use of Edge services in a smart agriculture application. We'll be discussing the foundational elements of hardware, software and systems to simplify the implementation of Edge services using cloud native elements. So let me now introduce our guests, and joining me are Jenny Panhorst, VP and GM of Network and Edge Platforms Division for Intel, Gil Schnorson, SVP Edge Portfolio and Solutions Infrastructure Solutions Group with Dell EMC, Susan James, Senior Director of Telecommunications Strategy at Red Hat, Gabriele Di Piazza, Senior Director Outbound Product Management, Telecom and Edge with Google, and Jim Brismitzis, founder of the 5G OI Lab. Hello everyone, good to see you all, and thank you so much for taking part in our roundtable. Jenny, what have you been observing in the broad market, and can you share more on Intel's Edge initiatives in this context?
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks, Guy, and thanks everyone for joining us today. We're all here because we're very excited about the Edge and the potential that Edge services are going to bring in the future. Just pick your favorite analyst report. There's a massive amount of data that's going to be created and then processed outside the data centers. Estimates range as high as 75% by 2023 of data will be processed outside of centralized data centers, and that means it's being processed at the Edge. And this is all about harnessing the power of that data to create new business opportunity and really find ways to enrich our lives and our work across a number of different areas. There's so many different areas of focus. If you look across different use cases you mentioned, in your intro, Guy, there's so many different areas of interest. If you look at, transformation that's happening with Industry 4.0, supply chain challenges that we've seen exist over the course of the past year plus, transformation happening in transportation and logistics to address those. Connectivity challenges that have arisen with respect to remote work and education, the need to handle retail environments and venues and smart cities and various common areas post-pandemic with different types of technology, whether it's contactless payment, contact tracing, various other types of capabilities. And then, of course, the trend that we were on already to personalized everything, capabilities that are coming about as 5G starts to deploy and edge computing proliferates, will help solve really important challenges in all of these areas and more. And it's really exciting to be a part of that. If you look at some of, kind of the common challenges that exist across a number of those different areas, you've of course got the need to deploy efficient infrastructure in terms of management of finite resources in connectivity and bandwidth and power. You've got a need to, yes, of course, there's greenfield opportunities, new deployments that are occurring, but you have a need also to address legacy integration and integration with brownfield deployments and existing, computing capabilities, both on-premise as well as in a network edge or a regional cloud edge type of environment. And what's becoming, very common in a lot of these new deployments is a pull for cloud native architectures in order to be able to deliver the type of flexibility and portability of the workloads that we stitch together in order to deliver these edge services. And so it's really exciting to kind of be a part of architecting these types of solutions. At Intel, we're doing a number of different things. Of course, we're thought of as a silicon vendor who's focused in a number of different areas. When we look at the needs that are coming in the edge, there certainly is a need for an increase in power and performance and price efficiency. One great example of a product portfolio that we're innovating in this space is our Intel Xeon D product line. We recently announced as part of our Intel Scalable product launch that we are sampling our next generation of Intel Xeon D processors. Really, many different product lines are utilized in different types of edge deployments. But I think our Intel Xeon D product line is a great example of, the type of optimized products that we're starting to see roll out in the edge. But in addition to those silicon capabilities, we of course have to empower our developers and our ecosystem with the tools and the capabilities to unleash, the capabilities and the performance of this underlying silicon to make it easier to really, utilize those features, create software, and then create these edge services that we're all here today to talk about. And one of the areas that we focused on is really the complexity that is involved in addressing and reaching the different connectivity capabilities that exist at the edge, whether it's wired, wireless, 4G, 5G, Wi-Fi. There's complexity involved in spanning across multiple different access methods. And so being able to abstract away some of that complexity, and then also being able to handle the complexity of onboarding and managing edge services and edge applications are really two critical areas of focus that we have. And so we've been working on this for a couple of years at Intel and with our partners. And we have an Intel Smart Edge commercial software offering that we've had as part of our portfolio for about the past 18 months, really focused on unleashing power in the on-premise edge at various types of enterprise environments. And customers use it to span multiple access methods, easily onboard and manage applications with cloud-like agility across any type of network infrastructure. And then we've also been innovating in a software toolkit that we've called Openness. And again, that's focused on unleashing the power of edge computing in a variety of different environments. And what we've been excited to talk about here at Mobile World Congress this year is Dan Rodriguez, in his keynote, announced that we're actually unifying these two capabilities, two sets of software capabilities under a common architecture and a common code base, so that we can provide customers with the right capabilities, whether they're building their own solution or whether they're looking for a commercial offering in their mobile multi-access and mobile edge computing capabilities. So very excited about our continued evolution, both in our silicon portfolio as well as our developer tools and software capabilities.
Thanks, Jenny. And Susan?
What I was going to add there, Guy, is that, I think it's really to emphasize some of the points that Jenny made there around it's an ecosystem activity. Not one company can do that. And I think that's been some of the things that Intel has really helped facilitate over the last couple of years. With companies like Dell, Red Hat, and the applications on top of that. And you're going to need, an extended community to be able to deliver that with the systems integrator. So I think, the great part of this is that it's actually a team effort to make this happen and actually realize the use cases.
Thanks, Susan. Jim, you'd like to add some comments?
Yes, I think Jenny and Susan nailed the points perfectly. Actually, we at the 5G Open Innovation Lab, we're actually building that software ecosystem, and the enthusiasm for enterprise companies that are really wanting to innovate on the edge, taking advantage of capabilities that are coming together, like Smart Edge and openness, are excellent examples of that. We'll talk a little bit about some of that later today, but I just wanted to echo their two comments. I thought they nailed their points perfectly about what's ahead.
And Jim, you've been part of this innovative use case for smart agriculture. And in fact, this is something that's already deployed today. Can you tell us more about how this became a reality?
We operate the 5G Open Innovation Lab, which is truly an innovation ecosystem that's bringing software developers together with their partners such as Intel and T-Mobile and Microsoft and others as well. And we also have public partnerships that include Snohomish County, the Pacific Northwest National Laboratory, Washington State University, and others as well. And Snohomish County actually approached us late last year with some grant funding to actually build a 5G resiliency project. And so we did. We had this opportunity to create two farm locations deploying CBRS capabilities with Edge. And we're in the process right now of actually turning on our Smart Edge instance. And what's exciting about this is now we can unlock capabilities like what you're seeing today. This is Innovate Ag, and Steve Mantle, who's the founder, has a side-by-side that's equipped with both soil sensing measurement equipment at the front of the side-by-side. On the back, he has LiDAR equipment. And what you see him doing is actually driving down a row of tree fruit. This particular tree fruit is Cosmic Crisp apples, which is unique here to Washington State. It's actually developed by Washington State University. What he's trying to do is to measure the soil acidity of the soil in that crop bed, but he's also using LiDAR equipment to capture the number of buds. We're just in the early part of the growing season, And the farmer is quite interested in understanding how many buds he actually has on his trees. They overlay that data over multiple passes, and they could judge quite effectively how healthy that crop is actually growing. Now, that's really important data that Steve is able to harness and uncover in just those passes, because it helps the grower make informed decisions around pruning, irrigation, and more importantly, labor usage and chemical usage. One particular farm that Steve supports out in eastern Washington spends on average during the growing season about $5 million of chemical spends every month, and that will go on for a good 3 to 4 months. Just with informed decision making around the types of pruning that he or she is required to do, the right levels of irrigation, they could cut that bill in half. So the ROI is real. This isn't something that just plays out over a long period of time. But what we wanted to do was to bring all of that really to roost inside an industrial setting, in this case, 2 farms in Snohomish County, and unlock that potential technology in an industry like agriculture that for so long hasn't really had that opportunity to participate in that technology and actually learn from it and make what they do more effective. And that goes beyond even agriculture into other industries that operate in rural America, like manufacturing and utilities and oil and gas and others as well.
Thanks, Jim. Absolutely fascinating. Jenny, that's quite an amazing use case there.
Yeah, it's so exciting to see this, in the real world, are already deploying today. And it's been really exciting to partner with the lab on deploying this with Smart Edge, as well as a number of other Intel capabilities. And, we talk a lot about, with the use cases that will be unleashed at the edge, truly delivering world-changing use cases. And I think this is a great example where you look at this opportunity to improve crop quality, crop yield, improve food resiliency, and you think about, broader set of issues that we're learning through the pandemic, demands increasing due to climate change. I mentioned supply chain constraints earlier. All of these are areas that can be addressed with these types of capabilities. And I love what Jim said around, connectivity, providing connectivity in rural areas, and the other things that can be unleashed. Of course, you can solve smart agriculture use cases. Jim also mentioned, manufacturing that very often, exists in those areas, but also with respect to remote education and the digital divide that has existed and has increased throughout the pandemic. And so being able to create resilient connectivity in those areas will have a multiplicative effect across a number of different areas.
Thanks, Jenny. And Susan?
Yeah, I think one of the things that came across to me that was really interesting, it's not just, reducing the costs, but the environmental benefits that you get by not using so many chemicals. I think, that's an additional benefit, we don't necessarily take advantage, or bring out through the economic side of things. But, that reduced wastage, all about better decision making, I think is really powerful. So it's not just an economic benefit.
Thank you, Susan.
Can I add to that?
Yeah, sure, Jim.
Yeah, Susan, I think you raise a really good point. Oftentimes, and it's not just in agriculture, I suspect this is probably the case in other industries as well, but oftentimes we're overcompensating on variables in this case in agriculture, because the yield at the end of the year has to meet certain requirements for the farmer to really net the best price for their crops. But I can imagine that that's happening in other industries as well. The lack of access to data, the lack of access to some automation, those restraints are actually holding industries and businesses back from making informed decisions on the right calls. And that's what I'm super excited about. And Jenny talked about this earlier. Just the raw capabilities of computing applications on the edge is phenomenal. What I'm super excited about is actually seeing this shift of applications that are built and running in the cloud and running portions of those applications now on the edge. It's a whole new area of app development that we're excited about exploring here at the lab too.
Thank you, Jim. And Gabriele?
Well, I had to jump in. First of all, Steve is a former colleague and friend, so it's great to see him, driving around on there. I was aware of that. I just want to point out that I think this use case, it's amazing because it shows that this is not just one piece of technology, but actually you bring together multiple things, right? So the ability to act on the edge, collect data, correlate data, but also look at the connectivity, right? They're talking about CBRS, private connectivity there. So it's how you actually pull this together. And back to what Susan said, there's an environmental aspect, but also an ecosystem aspect. As you can see, there needs to be multiple parties together that come together to solve this problem. So it's just great to see this.
Indeed. Thanks, Gabriele. Gil, can I turn to you now? What are you seeing in terms of your customer requirements for edge platforms that can support a variety of services, and how are you addressing these needs?
First of all, I gotta say it's great to be on a call with like-minded people. I love it that we are talking about things that I'm very passionate about. I think we've already touched on this, but I'll say it nevertheless. I think the edge is a story of opportunities meet challenges and constraints. And so we just talked about great opportunity in agriculture, and definitely this happens in every industry. The challenge is that it's not easy to do. In other words, you want to get all of that value out of the data, therefore you move resources toward the edge. But then you have to deal with environmental constraints, scale constraints, and you have to deal with connectivity, and you have to deal with security, and you have to deal with the lack of IT resources, and you have to deal with scale, and you definitely have to deal with a multi-cloud environment. And so I think some of that is inhibiting people to get more value and deploy more edge applications. And I think all of us on this call are somewhere touching the area of horizontal solutions, trying to get people to think more holistically about an architecture, an approach. Because what customers are doing is, because of all of those constraints, and because how the edge market is very application-driven, they are creating many, many silos. And so I think our job is to make sure that we can help them consolidate some of those workloads so they don't buy them in silos and then they have to manage them and secure them and maintain them. And so that's what we're thinking about. Dell is obviously a provider of hardware, and we partner with people on this call in multiple solutions for end users. We also have management, properties that help remotely manage some of our stacks, but mostly. And we're also in the business of creating vertical solutions, because we understand, like everybody else on this call, that the use cases are highly verticalized. What we desire to do, and what we partner with Intel, with Red Hat, and others, is to get to a more horizontal approach that will allow people to simplify and consolidate multiple use cases. And then I think everybody will kind of get the best of both worlds. The IT and the OT world collide, or unify in a more positive way, when we can allow them to run on a more horizontal, architecture, in a way that we know how to solve IT problems, really.
Thank you, Gil. And Jenny, are you seeing a similar scenario to that of Gil?
I don't think I could have said it any better myself. I think what Gil talked about around we innovate in these areas where the opportunities exist. Jim did a great job of walking through that smart agriculture use case, and there's so many common capabilities that we're learning exist across a number of different industry verticals. And so it's really about learning from these early deployments that we have in partnership across the ecosystem, and trying to identify where those horizontal capabilities exist. And that is why I'm really excited with the partnership that we have with Dell here at Intel around Smart Edge, and the Dell MEC platform that was recently announced, and the ability to unleash that multi-access connectivity capability, the ability to onboard various edge applications in order to span a number of different industries, address needs from many different verticals. So it's exciting to be a part of.
Indeed. Thank you, Jenny. Susan, please.
Yeah, what I think one of the great things with the Smart Edge that Dell just launched is that we have the ability to have other people taking care of that underlying infrastructure, which leaves those sort of industry verticals the ability to focus on the problems that they have. So in that agricultural case, they can then focus on, the yield of that, crop, for example. They don't need to worry about, what is the right server to put this on, and what underlying infrastructure do I need to have there. That's all taken care of. And I think, one of the great things about sort of cloud native and that the cloud providers have given us is this abstraction layer where, you take that difficulty of providing the infrastructure and really allows industries or specific companies to focus on solving their specific problems.
Thank you, Susan. Well, let's talk about that a little bit more, Susan. From a software perspective, what are some of the specific requirements at the infrastructure level that provide the foundation for a service platform?
Well, I mean, we see edge computing as an opportunity to extend the hybrid cloud all the way out to the data source and to the end users. And there's really no doubt that, edge computing and cloud computing are really intimately tied together. So, I mean, we're really committed to technologies like Linux and Kubernetes to drive that, modern edge computing. And we see that the combination of, hybrid cloud strategies and creating these reference blueprints, sharing that with the ecosystem is really a great way of solving those sort of edge challenges and giving the tools to, different industries to be able to innovate on top of that. And, programs that Intel run like, network builders and all of the work that they do with joint innovation labs are really great ways of being able to enable these edge use cases to succeed.
Thanks, Susan. Jim?
Yeah, Susan, one thing I didn't mention in my earlier comments was prior to the CBRS network that we had set up and the edge computing capabilities we set up at both farms. In this case, the founder, Steve from Innovate Ag, would literally have to drive down several miles to a reliable internet connection and offload that data. He then stepped forward and actually building a small data center in the trailer that he pulls his side-by-side in. Today, and what you saw is we actually now have the capabilities as Steve is driving down those tree fruit crops and creating new data. He's offloading that data to our network and processing that data on site. And we're weeks away from actually deploying that fully on Smart Edge, where we can then connect data from that farm in those passes directly to his cloud application as well. That sounds like it's easy to do. We're in the practice of actually making it happen right now. And I can tell you there's a lot of new learnings. But the fact that Steve is being able to generate this data, process it on the farm, and the grower now has real-time access to that data and making smarter decisions real time has been a game changer. Steve's also been flying drones to take a better understanding of the canopy of the crop itself, in this case, again, tree fruits, so that they can make informed decisions on where to prune. In that situation, similarly, he'd have to wait for the drone to land. He'd pull out the memory card, drive down 20 miles to a reliable internet connection, upload the data to his cloud application, and then wait for that cloud application to give him the insights that he really needed. That goes away. And I really want to underscore how important that compute nearby and using platforms like the Smart Edge and others that we're working with across all of our partners is really unlocking so much more potential that we take for granted in urban America because we have so much access to it. In rural America, in some of these industries that really are sustainability, they don't have that access, and it's really transforming their opportunities. I thought you made a great point, Susan. I just wanted to add more to that.
Thank you, Jim. Yes, please, Jenny.
Yeah, and certainly, Jim, what I was thinking of when you said that was, time is money. Back to what you said before, Susan, about the economic benefits and then other intangible benefits. That's a huge improvement for them, and it's unleashed by capabilities that are delivered across the ecosystem. If you look at the ability to deploy cloud native services, that's empowered by the cloud platform, Kubernetes-based cloud platform unleashed by Red Hat OpenShift. You look at the Kubernetes operator model. That's what enables us to integrate that better with our virtualized RAN technology, our Intel FlexRAN capabilities, creating an operator model around underlying accelerators to improve performance of the underlying platforms, to be able to converge that connectivity and that compute to deliver those types of capabilities that Jim was talking about. And the list just goes on in terms of the technologies that are delivered across the ecosystem to make those solutions happen.
Thank you, Jenny. Gil, did you want to comment as well?
I'm listening to Jim and to Jenny, and I'm thinking that a lot of people may not realize how hard, as Jim said, getting to that outcome is. And many people don't realize that now they can manage infrastructure and applications at the same time. And it used to be two different things that you do, or it was reserved to a public cloud that you could do it over there. I think as the more people understand that is a possibility, that would unlock even more use cases out there.
Great. Well, thanks everybody for those comments. Gabriele, how do you see the cloud contributing at the edge? And can you also tell us more about the edge-centric innovations that are happening on the Google Cloud Platform?
Yeah, sure. It's a wide topic. So first of all, I think we're starting to see cloud to become central to these deployments, and I'll comment on some of the points that were just raised, right? So I think a couple of points. One, from a scale perspective, it's almost like as cloud vendors, we've been almost preparing for this wave of edge in terms of scale. We run, as an example, thousands of edge locations around the world. Think of Google as an example. We have multiple services that serve over a billion people, billion users. The scale, the proximity, the latency that we had to engineer for, it's something that has been going on for many years. Efficiency, right? So the fact that we run global backbone, but also the fact the way we build our compute scale efficiency, storage scale efficiencies around the world, it's something key. Security practices, right? SRE practices, so site reliability. It's also very important as you scale this all the way to the edge and eventually all the way to the devices. If you also think of our large presence in the mobile market, right? Last but not least, I would say business models. So the ability to operate a model that goes in many ways actually closer to the needs of the user, right? So consumption based, ability to have actually specific service based driven type of approach. And so this is some of the themes, right? Cloud providers are working around. And then innovations on the Google side, there are many to list. I'll try to comment on few. First of all, I would say there's a big ingredient that we are layering on top of our presence, which is Anthos, and some mentioned before, leveraging Kubernetes as an open ecosystem. As we, originally studied the whole work and work in the community around that. But now we are using Anthos to extend this into a true hybrid cloud, right? Extending to deployments in Google, at the Google Edge, in other cloud providers, but also all the way to on-premise deployments. And as you know, we work in close partnerships with many carriers and operators, but also work directly with the end users to basically bring all the capabilities of Google Cloud directly to the location. So using Anthos. Especially, I'm glad to be here because there's a lot of collaboration with Intel, right? From optimizing the underlying stack, basically embedding some of the capabilities all the way down to the lower levels. Of course, a lot of work on the FlexRun technology as well. We made a couple of announcements earlier. And then let's look at some other points. Some of the best innovations of Google are actually fit for the edge. All the work that we're doing around artificial intelligence and machine learning, from bringing AI, ML, and inference all the way to the edge, to models back into cloud, and the ability to manage many types of data, all the way to video processing, and in many cases we even have ambient computing or audio processing to solve for some of the most interesting use cases. Another aspect is AR, VR. So we're starting to look at augmented reality, virtual reality, how to actually go from enhancing the consumer experience in choosing a product all the way to guide field technicians in solving problems. And this is actually something that I think there will be a lot of growth here in the future. We look at an ecosystem as well, right? Building an ecosystem of hundreds of vertical ISVs. It is a solution, it is an ecosystem, but we also would allow them to monetize, right? For example, exposing APIs through some of our RPG, API management tools. So multiple things, and also last but not least, we are seeing many use cases where we would like to actually build an end-to-end solution with all the different partners, not just from a cloud perspective, but landing all the way to the device, eventually even creating a full-blown slice, right, which lands on, for example, some of the innovation we're doing on Android, and how to bring this all the way to the end user, to the device attached to an application. And so, again, this is just a flyby of different things that we're doing here.
Fascinating. Thanks very much, Gabriele. Anybody else want to comment on the contribution of the cloud to the edge?
I think, Gabrielle is absolutely right. I think there is going to be a very fragmented approach actually early on, because there's so many communities out there and challenges that are underserved. And no one can do everything at the same time. So I think, we're going to see lots of innovation cells pop up using different kinds of technologies, but certainly cloud native is going to be absolutely there in most of those. And then, how they sort of populate up and consolidate over time, I think is going to be really interesting. But it really creates that opportunity for strong ecosystems to exist and facilitate innovation.
Thanks, Susan. Jim, some final comments from you?
Yeah, sure. I think Gabriella did a great job of kind of talking about that evolution of the cloud to the edge. The edge today, though, my friends, is a bit of a Wild West, right? If I'm an app developer today that loves Rancher and I built my database on MongoDB, replicating that as a standardized environment on the edge hasn't really been done yet at scale. And that's where the exciting opportunities, I think, are going to start to play out. One of the challenges we've had is not necessarily in setting up those use cases like the one you saw earlier. The bigger challenge we've had is how do we connect our startup applications that run in public cloud infrastructures to connect and actually process data on the edge. And that's a whole new area of opportunity that I think we're in the early innings of seeing play out.
Jim, thanks very much for that. And that brings our discussion nicely to a close. Thank you everyone for taking part today and sharing your views and experiences. Well, that was our panel on Edge Services Made Easy, which is one of several focused around 5G. Please be sure to watch the other discussions in our series from Intel, and you can find full details right here on the website. For now though, thanks for watching and goodbye.